Have you ever wondered what it's like to have the worst job in the world? Well, what is the worst job in the world? Today we're going to find out. If you guys do enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on noties. There's more content coming soon. Now let's start the video.
The worst jobs in history.
Gong Farmer.
If you ever think your job's crappy, try having to plunge into a pit of literal human doo-doo feces every single night. Way back in the day in good old England, some daring men made a career out of wading through human excrement. So-called Gong Farmers were tasked with draining out
Why would you want this as a job? Why? Why would you create this? Like, what? That makes no sense.
pits filled to the brim with offensive butt slop. The profession had existed for centuries, but it saw its height between the years of 1485 and 1603, also known as the Tudor period. Oi, I got some Tudor for you.
Tuna.
Since this was way before the invention of the turlet, people were content with just slamming their cheeks down in a public latrine to pinch off a quick loaf. The other
Yeah, that's low-key nasty, I'm not gonna lie. Imagine, like, pooping, and there's just, like, 3 different people next to you that are also doing the same thing. Like, no thank you.
problem was the lack of availability of somewhere to go. Towards the end of the 14th century, it's estimated that there was only one public bathroom per 2,000 people. Plus, keep in mind that all of that human waste was just piling up in a literal stone-lined hole in the ground, so you were just dropping logs onto a mountain of timber. The local government, realizing that this horrid threat to public health was fermenting beneath everyone's feet, took action to allow the construction of private outhouses and latrines in residential areas as a way to disperse the smelly sewage. It didn't work all that well. So with dookie levels rising, help was needed to drain the pits. Enter the Gong Farmer. The only time that they were allowed to perform their duties was under the shroud of night. And
That's even worse. Imagine, like, cleaning up somebody's poop and it's at night, like, you can't see. There was no electricity in the 1400s. You can't even see anything. How do you know what you're going through? I mean, you know what you're going through.
that really sucked. There were no flashlights, spotlights, or illumination of any kind.
Exactly.
You just had to hope that the moon was shining brightly to light your way through the filth. The nightmen would enter these cesspits and drain the contents using buckets and shovels. Excrement was loaded into barrels and carted off to be dumped near the River Thames. Don't worry, it was used as fertilizer later. Maybe. These men would be knee-deep, waist-deep, even neck-deep in the stuff, which had its own risks, the first and foremost being asphyxiation. Cesspits were often enclosed spaces with little to no ventilation, so the buildup of noxious and toxic gases was a very real threat. Although rare, a Gong Farmer could pass out from a lack of fresh air and drown in the waste.
Bro, imagine drowning in poo. Oh yeah, no thank you.
Since these pits just sat there and rotted, it was common for stone walls to collapse in on the farmers while they harvested their crops. Any scrapes or bumps would certainly get infected, which could only lead to a painful death. But these high risks were met with high reward. Since the job was less than desirable, Gong Farmers made quite a healthy living, about 6 pence a day. Now, I'm not quite sure what that is in non-silly sounding money, but sounds pretty good. Problem is though, Gong Farmers perpetually reeked from their labors and were only permitted to live in certain areas of the city, with most of the public actively avoiding them and, well, treating them like crap.
Chimney Sweep.
Now, if you're looking for a soul-crushing, body-breaking job that pays next to nothing, you're an idiot. But I could recommend that you apply for the occupation of Chimney Sweep. These services were all the rage in, you guessed it, England's Tudor period. But the job has existed for hundreds of years. Rapid urbanization led to the construction of a lot of buildings, and each one of them suckers needs a source of heat. Gotta keep them English toesies nice and warm during the miserable gray winter months until the arrival of the miserable gray summer months. So a lot of fireplaces and chimneys were built to meet that demand. To make matters even worse, regulations shrunk flue sizes down to as little as 9 by 9 inches. This made it nearly impossible for full-grown men to slip through the cracks. The solution? Children.
Ain't no way a kid is going in a chimney and cleaning it. That's crazy. Imagine you get stuck in there, like, dude. What if somebody forgets and they light a fire? Like,
Really young children. Adorable, wide-eyed orphans were yoinked from poor houses and taken on as apprentices called climbing boys, with opportunities to one day grow into master sweepers themselves, if they lived that long. If it wasn't obvious, chimney sweeping was extremely dangerous, especially for the little limber lads. Boys as young as 6 years old were sent up chimneys and told to get scrubbing. The physical dangers were abundant, as several children had died from getting stuck or horribly burned from scaling the scalding bricks. Keep in mind that these fireplaces were almost always in use, so those chimneys were hot and ready like a carry-out pizza.
Why wouldn't they like tell people to turn them off? Like, what?
It actually wasn't your lungs that you needed to worry about. No. It was your balls. Scrotal squamous cell carcinoma, also known as chimney sweeps carcinoma or just straight up scrotal cancer, was a death sentence. Something I didn't mention until now was that the young children, as a way to fit easier into the narrow hot chimneys, often went commando. No shirt, no shoes, no pants, but all service. The constant exposure to soot and such led to the development of tumors on their nethers. Once developed, they were lucky if they had a few years left in them. Sure, your sack is out of whack, but damn, that chimney's clean. You've probably heard of the radium girls, young women of the workforce that would paint luminous numbers and hands onto timepieces in the early 1900s. Well, this is similar. The process, as with most industries at the time, involved working with some nasty chemicals. The flavor of the day here was white phosphorus, an unstable compound that burned fiercely when ignited. You know, perfect for the few seconds that you would need to set something ablaze. On top of being both easily ignitable and violently reactive with oxygen, it had the triple whammy of also being extremely toxic. Of all matchmaking jobs, roughly half were involved in the direct handling of white phosphorus, with over 80% of the phosphorus fingerers being young women. These women would come to be known as Matchstick Girls. Day in and day out, these women were tasked with packaging the dipped matchsticks, with an entire workforce handling as many as 10 million across a 10-hour shift, meeting the demand of the 250 million matches being burned in Britain every single day.
10 million matches a day? Or no, what did I say, 12 hours or whatever? I don't even know. That's crazy. How can you make that much? That's crazy, man.
Remember that fire is what got people through the day. Need to cook? Fire. Need to keep warm? Fire. Need to see in the dark? Fire. Need to shrink your overhead? Fire. It was the biggest blessing humanity has ever discovered, and you can now summon it out of a little box in your pocket. The obvious problem is that fiddling with all of those fickle phosphorus fumes physically fucked you up. It was very common for both men and women to form phosphoric necrosis of the jaw. The condition, nicknamed Fossy Jaw, developed after the long-term exposure to phosphorus fumes. Initial symptoms included simple toothaches, which evolved into complete tooth loss, abscesses, swelling of the gums, and complete necrosis of the jaw. To put it simply, your jaw rotted off. If you did get the jaw rot, there was about a 1 in 5 chance that the rest of your body would be rotting not long after from contracting an even worse condition known as death. In 1888, over 1,400 Matchstick Girls, fed up with this blatant disregard for their safety, decided to strike, demanding better pay, working conditions, and abolition of unfair fines and penalties. The strike lasted for 2 weeks before demands were met and accepted.
It's crazy that this stuff was like allowed back then. Like, it just blows my mind. Like, they had kids in chimneys and everybody around dangerous chemicals.
If you think your job's exhausting, try hauling an entire freaking ship up a river with your bros. These are burlaks, or barge haulers. They hauled barges. Typically dirt-poor peasants just looking for enough coin to eat for a week, these men were tasked with strapping on a strap and using whatever strength they had left in them to pull in ships from the Caspian Sea all the way up the Volga River in the days of the Russian Empire. Since ship traffic was near constant thanks to strong trade, burlaks were in high demand to carefully guide the vessels up the Volga. One advantage to working in the Russian Empire was the cold winters. Can't exactly move ships upstream when the waterways are completely frozen over. So burlaks were seasonal, working dawn until dusk, thaw till frost. But since the combination of being poor and not working meant certain death, the men would pick up odd jobs in the winter to barely scrape by.
Hey, I make a duck. Smudge, smudge.
At the beginning of the 19th century, it is estimated that about 600,000 burlaks worked in the Russian Empire, but the evolution of ship technology and the invention of the steam-powered ship rendered the job obsolete. By the end of the 19th century, the burlak profession had vanished over the horizon.
I mean, I guess that's a good thing. I mean, not for the people that were doing it, but like, it's good that we don't have people doing that anymore.
Now I know what you're thinking, so
Snake
stop it.
milker?
This has nothing to do with milking your own snake or giving little pinches to little snake nips, which don't exist. Snakes aren't mammals. The job of a snake milker was to extract their venom from their fangs. He looks cute, right? Think again. Snake venom was highly coveted for use in early warfare as a biological weapon, granting you the ability to proc tick damage over time to your enemies if you weren't able to finish them off yourself.
People still do this too. Like, people still milk snakes, I guess is what it's called. They extract the venom.
Perhaps the best weapons of choice to get slathered in the stuff were arrows. Few civilizations have been noted for using envenomed or poisoned arrows throughout history. You've got the Khoisan people of southern Africa who have been using poisoned arrows for thousands of years in hunting large prey, and the Harmatilians who used viper venom against an invading Alexander the Great. But no army employed the use of snake venom better than the Scythians. Also duking it out against Alexander the Great, the Scythians developed their own iconic poison for warfare. Combining not only viper venom, but also putrefied human blood and excrement, even minor scrapes from their weapons were lethal. Snake milkers. Like I said, it was their job to wrangle and wrestle up enough snakes to meet the demand of entire armies. But luckily, this wasn't a time for catch and release practices. Kill the snakes, take their venom. That's the job. Of course, that is easier said than done. By nature, snakes are shy little fellas and pretty hard to find. Chances are you get struck before you even noticed one. One catch of their fangs is enough for it to be game over. Snake milkers were considered lucky if they even managed to survive a single round of collecting.
There's gotta be a snake, like, that we haven't found, with venom that, like, cures something. It's gotta be, right? I'm not tripping. Boy.
Imagine getting ready to charge onto a battlefield to either invade a country or defend your own. You see your fellow soldiers gearing up for battle with their trusty firearms, and you're given a drum. I got a fight. Drummers, believe it or not, were a critical part of warfare in the days of yore. Since there were no such things as radios or more instantaneous methods of communication, drummer boys were employed and trained to maintain order on the battlefield, signaling commands, attacks, retreats, and everything in between. Peaking in popularity during the American Civil War, drummer boys were typically in their teenage years or young adulthood, though some more famous drummer boys were much younger. Little Charlie King of the Union Army died in battle at the age of just 13, being the youngest casualty in the Battle of Antietam. Despite what people may think, drummer boys did not lead troops into battle. That would be stupid. Instead, they would relay commands from behind soldier lines, though they were still known to be valuable targets. If you break the communication line, you break down the army. Outside of
I thought they would stand in front, that they would just play the little tune as they're walking.
combat, drummer boys had a wealth of other responsibilities, such as carrying messages between units, assisting battlefield surgeons with amputations, carting the wounded up the field, fetching supplies, or burying the dead. They very rarely carried weapons of their own, so if they had to defend themselves in the heat of battle, they were pretty shit out of luck.
Groom of the Stool.
If you wanted to be one of the most influential people in all of England but don't have a drop of royal blood in you, you'd want to squeeze into the role of the Groom of the Stool, a job requiring you to get up real close and personal with the king or queen at the time. Look, we all have to go once or 12 times a day.
Oh my god, dude, I used to read that book. I had that book when I was younger. Oh, that was an amazing book.
So someone as prestigious and important as the king is gonna need help doing so. I mean, imagine feeling the sudden urge to blow out your britches, but you have to fight through said britches to accomplish the mission. Grooms of the Stool assisted the monarch with any labors regarding biological movements. This included helping the removal of clothing, preparation of the lavish and luxurious royal shipbox, and the removal of the splendiferous solids, but not before their proper examination. Yeah, that's right. Grooms of the Stool were not only tasked with cleaning up the royal slurry, but making sure that the passings were healthy, taking notes of any abnormalities in appearance or frequency. These notes would be passed on to the king's personal physician to diagnose any possible ailments. Well, that's not very helpful, is it? After the log was sent down the river, the Groom of the Stool would also assist in the cleanup effort, either by handing the king his own personal cleaning cloth or by taking up wiping duties themselves. Now you might think that this job sucked, but it was actually highly coveted and well respected, as Grooms of the Stool had access to the king outside of the public eye, allowing for valuable private conversations. Commonly high-ranking nobles or politicians, Grooms of the Stool were known to have influence in many formal rulings, laws, or personal life. So that Anne Boleyn chick's hot, right? No. The first documented Groom of the Stool dates all the way back to 1495 under King Henry VII. The role continued to evolve over the years to the title of Groom of the Stool, though they were more so referred to as either the gentleman or gentlewoman of the bedchamber, depending on the monarch in charge, with responsibilities eventually focusing solely on the king or queen's wardrobe. The position was held for over 400 years until being formally discontinued under King Edward VII in 1901.
Alright, guys. Okay, what do you think was the worst job? Honestly, it's either the first one or the last one. The Groom of the Stool or the Gong Farmer. I mean, just, that's nasty, bro. I would not want to be walking around in people's poop or wiping somebody's butt, bro. That's kind of nasty. Alright, that's about it. If you did enjoy the video, like, subscribe. See you in the next one. Peace. Subscribe.